Hello and welcome. This is Business Breakthroughs Podcast. My name is Diane Fulmer, your host. I'm the founder of DE Fulmer LLC, a marketing agency offering book editing, copywriting, and consultation services. So busy business owners can bring their authentic stories to their audience to connect, build relationships, and increase their sales. In the description box or show notes, you'll find some links to connect with me. If you want to sponsor an episode, please reach out. Thank you for your support. This is an interview-style podcast where we talk to business owners about their origin stories and lessons learned. You'll get to realize you're not alone, and we've all been there at some point. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Comment below and let us know your thoughts on this episode. With that out of the way, let's get started. On today's episode, we have Michelle Oucharek-Deo from Van Art Expression. Van Art Expression offers creative arts therapy counseling, business coaching, keynote speaking, and presentations. The counseling side of the business offers people an expressive way to find solutions to their personal problems. The coaching, keynotes, and presentations offer companies and corporations a fresh and unique way to approach challenges in the workplace with humor and creativity, whether you work at the office or virtually. Hi, and welcome, Michelle. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you, Diane?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining us today for this conversation.
I'm really excited to be here today.
We're excited to have you. So, can you tell me some more about yourself and what led you to start a business?
Oh, it was so funny. When I read the prep question, my thoughts rolled back to one of the first conversations I ever had with my first mentor, who happens to be my father. He passed away several years ago, but thank you. Yeah, and actually it's played such a huge part in my role of all of the development of my business. Before he passed, he was a self-employed financial manager, insurance man. And so I had the opportunity to see him grow his own business throughout my whole life. And one of the things that really, really marked for me at that time was his ability to be able to use his own time the way he wanted to. And so everything from if I had a play during the afternoon at school, my dad could be there when other dads couldn't, things like that. And so as I grew and got older, the idea of being self-employed and starting my own business was always rooted in my core. And so after I had been through school, I did my first degree at the University of Victoria in British Columbia in fine arts. And I actually got my first degree in costume design and construction. Not very many people know that. But it was my creative beginnings. And then I went on to do my training as an art therapist. And I did a 2-year graduate level diploma program. And once I finished that, it really wasn't a question of whether I would start my own business. It was when. And so that was in 1994. I started, and everything has grown since then. This year, we just celebrated our 30th anniversary with Van Art Expression. Yes. It's definitely been an interesting time in our lives. When I started, it was just me. And then I met my husband, and he was in a music therapy program in a local program here where we live. And so he ended up joining our business in 1998 after he finished school. And so we started the creative arts therapy business together. And so we were offering art and music therapy services for the first few years until later that I did more training, and then I started offering horticultural therapy services. So that was kind of the first set up from the therapeutics, from the counseling side of things, that we were offering the creative arts therapy pieces.
Nice. So you offer several different types of art therapy.
Yeah. So within the whole field of art therapy, there are some people who stick to more traditional methods of art therapy, paint, pencil, crayon, like pastel, clay. That's kind of like a basic set that most people will have. Because of my background working in the theater and working with a lot of fabric arts, I really found it a really amazing step for me is to incorporate that expertise into my art therapy practice. And so I have people working with sewing machine. I have people working with needlepoint, knitting, all those different kinds of ways to be able to get your body involved in your therapeutic experience. Because I truly believe that sometimes people, it's one of the reasons that I went into the whole field of art therapy and creative arts, is that when it comes to a therapeutic relationship, even with ourselves, we're often so in our heads. And part of what I really, really believed in was the importance of being able to move from our heads to our hearts and being able to use
Mhm.
our hands to be able to express sometimes what we don't have in words. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I was just reading Still the Mind by Alan Watts yesterday,
Hmm.
and he was talking about how humans tend to overthink things. But I mean, when you see a tree, they're just being a tree, or when an animal is there, they're just sort of being. And then we can sort of still our overthinking by getting more into a being state. So then he went over some exercises for that in that book. So,
For sure. And I think that's one of the pieces, like when I think about the way and the model of business development that I've had and that I've taught, and then when I would get brought in to teach at some of the schools, is that when it comes to developing a business, I always believe in the idea of making sure that as you're developing that core of your business, that the
mhm.
actual core of your business is you. It's you,
Yeah.
your family, your values, and your ethics. And if you can establish that core, you can build your business around that core. Because as we know, businesses change, they come and go, things happen, economies happen. But if you have that core value of who you are, you can shift that as your business needs to shift. If you put that one single business mode in the center of it, as soon as if anything happens, it'll collapse.
Yeah.
And then you're left without all the other pieces surrounding it. So I really have always believed that if I can keep a strong center for myself, my own core values at the center of my business, it will launch me into whatever direction the business needs to go over the years. And it has for sure.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the leadership that you have in your business is driving the whole ship, whatever direction it's going in. So that's a really important point.
I mean, I love when you bring up the topic of leadership because it's one of
Mm.
the areas that I truly believe that in order for us to be able to build successful businesses, we have to be able to give back to our professional and personal communities and to have that balance so that the skills and the expertise you're building in your business can then be offered up on in a community basis and a professional basis so that your business system and your business ethics and values can be able to start reaching out in other directions, which helps your
Mhm.
business and helps you.
Yeah, exactly. So we touched on this a little bit with your origin story, but what really inspired you to get started in business and make that leap? You were inspired by your father. Let's see. So, what have you learned and who helped along the way? You mentioned your husband. Maybe talk about some lessons that you learned.
Well, so definitely. So I mean, one of the things like I would probably say the first lesson that I learned in my business is that the first thing I did was I came up with a name. Well, you come up with so
Yeah.
the except that the first name that I ended up having and I got it registered with the government, and the first name actually was Van Art Express. And so one of the things I learned from that is that I'd already set up my business, and one of my supervisors at the time professionally said to me, "Kind of sounds like a mail delivery service." And it was interesting, and I just went, "Oh my goodness, I've lost the mark." And so that was my first
Yeah.
lesson in getting feedback about your name, about the fundamental values of what your business is before you start putting it into print, before you get it approved in different places. So I shifted, then I had to dissolve the company, then put it all back together again as Van Art Expression. And then
Oh, wow.
that's where we stuck and we stayed with that. So that's probably my first big lesson I would give to people. The other is that throughout your years, having done this now for 3 decades, we're now actually just shifting over into our third kind of branding of our company. That over the years that there's been different branding logos, different kinds of websites, all those kind of pieces. And I would say that'd be the other one is that it is okay to allow yourself to change and to grow and develop. And if it means that you need to do a brand change, then embrace it, take it,
Yeah.
and go with it. You don't ever feel stuck. Like if you're starting to feel stuck and things are stagnant, make a change. That's yeah. Don't ever worry about that.
Yeah. Business, I think, is one of the biggest personal development journeys that anyone can undertake. And there's a lot of growth and evolution, and people shift.
Yeah. I think when you asked about mentors and about people who made a significant difference in your life, I would say one of a professional who's made a huge difference in my life is Dr. Alan Wolfelt. And he's out of Fort Collins, Colorado. and runs the Center for Loss and Life Transition. I saw him speak here in Vancouver one year, and there was something about his presentation and his belief in being able to be a companion with someone on their journey of grief that really took me in. And so I went on, ended up doing a whole series of training down in Fort Collins, Colorado at his center and with him. And it really changed the fundamental philosophy around some of the work I did in grief and loss. And so I would say that from a professional point of view and a business model point of view, it really kind of changed my trajectory on how I would work with someone in that area of grief and loss. Because within any business, of course, there's areas of interest and expertise. And one of the areas that I've specialized in for years is grief and loss. And then sometimes I'll niche down and work with different populations within the area of grief and loss. But having that foundational learning is so important. And this is a huge part of business that some people don't always embrace is that once you've finished your formal schooling, if you do formal schooling, that keeping up your learning and adding things into your toolbox is so, so important. It makes the difference of keeping things fresh that you can offer to your clients and to individuals and to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's part of that personal development and evolution and growth.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah, no,
course.
it's for sure. I feel very, very lucky to have had that learning experience early on in my career, and it definitely has stayed with me throughout my life so far.
Wonderful. All right. So we are at the part of the podcast where we go through our brief breakthroughs. So these are normally short answers. Sometimes people wind up telling stories with these. Either way that moves you is fine. All right. So the first one is, what's a mistake people make?
First mistake that people make is not valuing their worth, is undercharging.
That's a really good one. Very common. Okay. A recent lesson that you learned.
A recent lesson. Oh, yes. So my most recent lesson is that I need to develop a proper intake referral form so that if I get just a random referral on the internet, that I have them fill that out before I make contact with them. Most of my career has all been referral based, like direct referral that somebody I know has referred them. And recently I've gotten a couple of referrals. Now, this was very interesting. So this is my lesson learned. So I ended up picking up this referral and I started answering questions they were asking about some services. And during the process, I started to get a feeling on my neck, like the instinct, my hair started to go up on my neck. And I'm like, something doesn't feel right about this. But my kind side said, oh, I want to help this person. What can I do? So I started giving more information and we started going back and forth. And every time I asked more questions, their answers were not the way, after doing this a lot of years, like there's certain answers you expect. And then I would ask more questions and I wasn't getting the right answers. And so at a certain point, I finally sent a note back to the person and just said, it appears that we are having some communication issues and that we're not really being able to connect the way we would want to. So I just want to thank you so much for reaching out to me and just wish you all the best. And so at that time, I really had to make a decision about just letting go of the referral and not trying to push it and listen to my instincts that something wasn't falling right for me. And so that would be, I would say, my biggest lesson in that is that I need to have another piece of policy or procedure in place to deal with that kind of referral when I'm building my business.
Yeah, there's several little lessons embedded in there to help making sure that you're working with someone who's a good fit, figuring out your process internally for vetting that person. And then also you can go to that each time too. So that way, if you run into it again, then you know exactly what to do. So,
Oh, exactly, exactly. And I think that when I look back, the biggest lesson I learned, and that was actually something that happened last week. So this is fresh and new.
oh, wow.
That's very, very recent lesson. So even after 30 years, we have lessons to learn. And I think that's the piece is always keep your ears and your eyes open for learning new things. But the piece that it just reminded me how important it is for you to listen to your instinct and follow that piece. And that if something doesn't feel right, then you really need to listen to that internally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's huge. That's the biggest thing, really. In all kinds of relationships, business, personal, anywhere. Yep. I have to say.
We're getting life lessons too. Yes, life lessons. Yes.
All right. So, what is a recent win that you had?
A recent win? Oh, my recent win is that I made a decision to move forward and set the date for completing my new nonfiction book. And it's a win for me because I've been sitting on the research and the generalized outline for this book for 2 years. And the other day I was like, that is it. I am taking this. I set a date. I'm working with a small team and they've got me on a daily program of what I need to get
Mhm.
done and I'm on track. So I'm very excited. The first draft should be done by September 8th. That's the
Woo.
goal. Yeah. So this book actually is all about my time management tool and the time management philosophy that I've been developing over the last 2 years. And
Mhm.
so it's just taking that next step of putting it into reality. And so then with the goal of moving forward and expanding Van Art expression into the coaching and into the keynote speaking about the value of time and how so many people have lost minutes in our days and how we can reclaim those minutes and then to be able to increase our productivity and our quality of life. And so I'm so excited about this book
Mhm.
coming up. Yeah.
Yeah, time management is a major factor with business. There are so many different things, especially when people are starting and you're trying to do everything and wear so many hats, trying to figure out what to prioritize and when.
It's so
Yeah.
true. I've always had a fascination with time, one might say. And so when this time philosophy piece started to come about and started to develop, I realized how important it was for me that I was able to now I was creating some new time tools for myself so I could increase some of my productivity, get more goals done. And I'm like, well, I'm not the only one who's got some situations that I want to increase this. So I started testing it out with authors who were wanting
Yeah.
to finish books, a few corporate people who were finding it difficult to get some of their corporate work done. And so I started testing out some of the different time tools and started to see the impact it was having on people. I remember I had this actually a student, she was graduating from a recreational therapy program and she had her final licensing exams coming up and she was working full time, but she was
Mhm.
so stressed out. And I said to her, okay, so are you willing to try one of my time tools? And she's like, I'm willing to try anything because I got to get this all done. So she was able to implement my 42-minute hour program into her days while she was studying. And it was funny because when she finished writing her exam, she called me from the elevator and she's like, I wrote the test, I passed. And she goes, and it was all because of you. And I'm like, well, I appreciate that. It wasn't all because of me, but thank you. She goes, no, but
Mhm.
it was she's like, being able to use your time tool really helped me to be able to focus on being able to not only study for my exams, but also take care of the life that I had to live in between. And that's really one of the kind of the work, it's a work-life balance time tool. So being able to really implement both and so that you're not ignoring anything and you're developing a plan that's going to be able to include it all. So yeah, so I'm really excited.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only so much time in a day, there's only so much energy in a day, and really trying to figure out how to get it all in some days can be really difficult for some people.
It's so true, and that's one of the reasons why, like, in part of my program, I do something called the time recovery assessment, and I
Mhm.
start working with people on breaking down like, literally, it will take a 24-hour day or even sometimes
Mhm.
48 hours, and I'll break down with someone all of the individual steps of what actually they were doing during those times of the day, and so
Mhm.
sometimes it can be a little bit jarring for someone because when they have to write it down and actually see it on the paper, how many hours they spent maybe scrolling, or were they watching 4 movies, or did they watch 6 episodes of something because they were stressed out? So, on those kind of things that we start taking a look at. But once we get past that piece and I talk about no more time shaming, once we've
Yeah.
identified it, let's not worry about that anymore. Let's get on with it, and we're gonna figure out a way for you to recover the time so that you can then start increasing your goal productivity and your quality of life. So there's always a way. We won't now
Exactly.
not exactly.
Yes. I mean, some days you just need to. I took a sick day this week and I watched an entire season of a show, and that's fine. Now I'm back to work.
And that's actually part of my program is that it's about intentional time. If
Yeah.
somebody chooses intentionally that they need to take a day off and they need to sit and watch like an entire season of something, but they do that with intention, that's very different than someone who loses their time because they all of a sudden get caught because of something else. So
Yeah.
that's part of the conversation that I like to have with people, especially in my coaching, is about that difference between intentional time and then lost time.
Yes, that's brilliant. I love that because I know I definitely have some of both. So I've started journaling that and asking myself, okay, so what I used to do when I had a 9 to 5 that kept me more structured in the morning was I would set a timer when I'd sit down with my coffee. And then I would actually know how long I was staring into the void holding my cup. And then, let's get ready now. Chug it and go. And I was like, oh, now that I have more flexible time,
Yeah.
so now I'm starting to set a timer again in the morning. So
Well,
moving you hear that.
I do. What's funny is I do. So when we're doing the part of the training and we do the first, like the whole 42-minute hour concept is actually about, it's all based on 60 minutes, but we call it
Yeah.
the 42-minute hour based on
Yeah.
42 minutes of structured activity that's focused on goal orientation or something that you're wanting to do. And then 18 minutes that you set aside for doing the life things like, oh, I got to run, catch the shower. I got to fold my laundry. I've got to
Yeah.
do those things. So it's a really great program from that side. If you're at home and working, which so many people are now, yes. How often do we get caught up in other things, right? So
Yeah.
I do try and set up. I've got some people who can do 2 or 3 42-minute hours in a day if they really have to get something structured and done. But it definitely allows people then to have a cup of coffee or to take a breath and do their yoga for
Mhm.
18 minutes in between when they're doing their
Right.
other piece. But the one thing I did notice too is that as I've done my research and I've started diving deeper with different business models, one of the things I noticed is that people needed more options than just my
Mhm.
42-minute hour. And so from there, I started to develop a whole other set of time tools. And so if people are wanting to learn more about those are things that I talk about more on my Facebook page, my 42-minute club Facebook page, or in my
Mhm.
coaching and all those kind of things. So
Nice. We'll have to include those links in the show notes and in the description. So we will definitely check that out.
thank you. Thank you. That sounds
Right.
great.
Thank you for sharing about that. That was wonderful. Okay. It's very educational.
I'm a bit of a time nerd, I have to admit, but my husband kind of laughs about how excited I get about it. But I truly believe that if we can all reclaim the minutes and the time that we lose during the days, it does improve our quality of life and improve our mental health also. And we can do more and have more fun because aren't we supposed to be having more fun in our life?
Yeah. So you have to make time for fun. And then also, I've seen it pop up on social media, people talking about keeping promises to yourself and how that can make you feel better overall. So, in a way, managing your time is a way to keep promises to yourself because there are things that you wanted to do. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. I mean, that if we can hold ourselves to account for certain things in our lives, and we start small, it doesn't have to be anything big, that you start building those small successes. And before you know it, you're actually building your confidence and you're moving yourself and you're moving your business in a direction you can move your business or your life, right? I mean, that's the whole
Okay.
thing that it can move either way. I know your focus is around business development for today. And truly, this like all of these aspects of my life from the counseling to the coaching to the development of my time philosophy and the work that I'm doing and the trainings. I mean, that's all an expansion of 30 years of expertise and all the things that I've seen. And the one thing that I saw like a lot in the last probably 6 or 8 years is the amount of young people and myself too, not young, that they've lost their ability to stop doing something when they don't want to be doing it anymore and they need to be doing something else. So, and that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to develop this whole program was to give people an option. So being able to
Yeah.
have something that they could choose to do differently with their time.
I like that. The ability to choose and be conscious about your time. Yeah.
I think it can change your life. I know it has literally changed my life. You always think, oh, my life changes when you have your child, your life
Mhm.
changes when you get
Yeah.
married, when you graduate from here, you move to a new
Yes.
house. But I can honestly say, number one, my life changed the day I started my business. My life changed again when Van Art Expression expanded into offering different kinds of services. And my life has changed once again in a much better way by expanding the business now into something where I can go bigger and I can actually talk to
Mhm.
more people like yourself about this whole idea
Yeah.
so I can reach more people. My whole career has been mostly one on one. and
Mhm.
helping people from that capacity. And now the goal is to be able to expand the business. And this is where we talked at the beginning about when you are looking, that never be afraid about expanding, never be
Mhm.
afraid about changing a brand, all those kind of things. It's scary sometimes.
Yeah. People get fear of success sometimes.
And I wonder, but I think that's part of it is embracing, well, what does the fear of potential success look like? What is
Yeah.
it that's holding you back? And one of the things I laughed about my fear of what was holding me back was the worry that somehow I would need to travel. And I'm like, well, what kind of food would I eat? And I know that sounds silly, but it's not because I've always had a lot of challenges with eating certain foods when I'm traveling. But I thought, you know what? If I plan properly and manage
Mhm.
those kind of pieces, I'm not going to let that worry stop me from growing this part of the business. So,
I don't think it sounds silly. I think that the brain comes up with whatever it has to protect you. And sometimes those things are reaching back to somewhere that you don't even remember. And then all of a sudden you get these thoughts popping in your head and examining those thoughts and saying, why do I believe this? And is it even true? And then going from there can be really helpful.
you make a really good point because that actually can go back to your story of origin, right? So before the business even got started, what would even be the seeds that would get you to that piece? What would have been the problem in your life that you wanted to solve, and what business do you want to create, and all those kind of stepping stones. But it's true, our origin stories, they can stop us in our tracks.
Yes.
And our job and part of the counseling piece of what I do in the art therapy piece is really trying to dive in to help people to move beyond the things that are their barriers. And it's one of the reasons for the people who are on YouTube who are seeing this. Behind me is this very large painting that I did, and
Mhm.
it's actually a piece that I needed and that I needed to do for myself after my parents died. And
Mm.
the actual canvas is an original canvas, like the physical canvas was the last canvas my dad had in his art room. And so
Wow.
I wanted to paint something on it. And I worked for 5 years on different paintings until finally, at one point, I threw it outside, threw the whole canvas. And for anyone who doesn't see it, it's 4 foot by 5 foot. It's a huge canvas. I threw it out into the rain. My husband says to me, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm giving up." And he said to me, "You're not giving up." And I said, "Yeah." And so and he said, "Well, let's just put it under the deck so it doesn't get wrecked." And so it took me another month to bring it inside. And what I realized then is that, and that was me actually, that was one whole part of my therapeutic process and really living, being an art therapist, actually living
Yeah.
my grief and loss through the art making. And
Mhm.
so down to the hucking it out the door, which is rather
Yeah.
dramatic, but it felt good. And
Um,
so the piece where I kind of weave it back to is that actually all just kind of threads back into the role my dad played in my life and just the
mhm.
sadness I have that he's not here to see everything that I'm accomplishing. So
Yeah. So to describe the painting a little, and just to also point out how beautiful it is with the colors, it looks like it's flowers with this gold and red and this white light in the center. And then in the background, it's this lush green. So it's this growth and this beauty that's there growing out of this canvas. So that's touching.
thank you. That's a beautiful way to put it. Yeah, it's an oil
Yeah.
painting piece that just takes on a life of its own, and it really took on a life of its own. And so I'm
Yeah.
just, I'm really thankful, and that's another piece that I really suggest when people are developing and growing their businesses is to actually step into their business model. Be a client, be your own client. See what that's like, because to be able to take a step into that and experience what you're asking other people to experience, I think
Mhm.
make a huge difference on how you can shift your model slightly or what you need to do. I know that completing the painting has been a huge part in my own healing process and allowed me to be able to see how important it is moving forward in other areas of the business, how important it is for all of us to be able to complete something that we started to.
Yeah. True. Yes.
It's funny, wasn't quite going to go into the painting, but I'm glad we did. I think that it really
Yes.
describes that.
Definitely.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. So now I'm curious about your other painting.
so
questions for you, but they do that. Was there a reason that you chose the other painting for the background? It has some interesting colors and lines, and I like the variety,
Okay,
actually.
so this other painting, so a little bit harder to describe to people on the podcast.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I want you to imagine it's probably 18 years ago. Yeah, 18
Okay.
years ago. My son is 3 years old. We went to Hawaii with my family. And when we got back, we were actually living at my sister in law's house for 3 months. And so that my husband, my son, and myself. And one day I said to my son, he's 3, and I said, honey, what do you want to do today? And he said to me, I want to paint, mommy. And I said, okay. I said, let's do a family painting. And so this actually was one of the first family paintings that the three of us worked on together. And so there are elements within the whole piece that actually, for my son, there's actually a fish that he painted, and he said those are the fish that he saw in the water in Maui. And
Mm,
there's all different elements that each one of us added to this piece. So I hang that piece up there, reminding me that my core value really is my family, and that
yeah.
they're at the core of who I am, and I build my business around that. And so that's one of the reasons I keep that up here, just to add that
Mhm.
as my something that one of my other mentors often referred to me as images and ethics. And so I did this course one time on images and ethics. And what that really meant was that keeping things in your working space around you that remind you of the ethics that drive you in your business model. And by
Mm,
keeping those images around you, that it helps for you to be able to use as a goalpost and something
mhm.
to be able to reflect back on while you're working at all times so that you keep that piece alive within your workspace. And so that's been a huge part of me. So that is definitely one of my images and ethics. It's just one of those pieces I like to keep around because it just makes me smile. And I can see my son with his paintbrush in his hand painting those strokes and the bright colors and the movement, and my husband working through some other kinds of different brush strokes
Mhm.
on the page. And for that one, we use acrylic paint because when you work with little
Yeah.
kids, you never want to use oil paint. There's a life lesson for you. Never use oil paint with little kids.
Yeah.
The best you can do is use acrylic paint, which is great because it dries fast.
Yes. It does stick to your clothes, though. So wear an old skirt.
Wear an
Yeah.
old skirt,
Yes.
100%.
Here you go. Yeah, that's
There you
true.
go.
Let me see if I can remember this thought that was formulating through my mind because I didn't want to interrupt because that was beautiful. So, art isn't just meaningful in the moment that it's made, art is also meaningful in when you surround yourself with it and you remember those beautiful emotions and memories.
100%. Well,
Yes. I don't even know what running through my head when I was
don't even, I will agree with you 100%. I don't need to add anything else. Yes.
yes. So I love that about art. And I feel like people get sentimentally attached to art and besides creating it, also having it around them. Yeah.
One thing I can really encourage for people is that there's so many different ways to make art. And when I teach in the art therapy programs, one of the things I talk to my students about is the idea of creating big A art and allowing people to beyond. And when I say big A art, excuse me, I'm referring to beyond the paint and paper. Other
Mhm.
kinds of art and creative process that allows someone to expand and to really dive deep into what's good for them. And even I see big A art as someone who, there may be someone who doesn't draw or paint, and don't worry about that. We can
Oh,
go and sit in a gallery and look at a painting and see the brush strokes, or look at a sculpture and be able to see where someone carved away something. I mean, I think that, yeah, those kind of things can really speak to. It's much like music too. Like different people,
yeah.
you can listen to it, you can play it. It all affects us in different ways, but it helps you move inside. So that's what.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Getting in touch with that being part of us.
And I couldn't ask for anything more, to be in a career and build a business that is that art and heart is at the base of everything I do.
Yes.
That's the bottom line. Everything is based on heart, and I think that's a model that I've always stuck with, and I will continue to stick with even as we continue to grow and develop. That heart has to be at the base of everything.
I like that. So my next question was, what is a goal that you have this year? And you mentioned your book. Are there any other goals this year that you want to talk about?
Oh, let's see. So as far as the from that side, yes. So my one of my goals is to actually be on a podcast every month. Right. The last time. That's one of my goals. The other one is to finish the book. The other one is to actually finish I've been working on some of my fiction books. I run a small imprint company. And so outside of my banner expression business, I also run Live and Grow Press, which is where I publish my own fiction books. And so my goal is to actually get my new series out there. My current series that I have is one called Wine, Love, and Friendship. And so it is, and the first book in the series is called The Girl in the Peach Tree. And so really it's trying to find that balance between the work and between the nonfiction work and on the development of the speaking. And then really the fiction writing is for me is like my painting. It's the creative side where I sit outside under a tree with my computer or my pencil and a coffee, always a good coffee. And
Yes.
well, that's probably my other balance is making sure
Sure.
that I keep that balance. Yes, writing, talking, enjoying meeting new people, all those good things.
That sounds great. So, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
5 years. Well, the goal chart says in 5 years that I will be doing speaking engagements internationally by then. I'll be speaking on my ideas on time management and the philosophy to be able to help encourage other people to find reclaimed minutes in their days and to do it with humor. And I always like to include a little bit of joy and sparkle into my presentations. So if I can add that into people's lives, that really helps me. So I see that. And one of my goals is to have at least 2 books being published a year. So being able to get those out, keep my fiction books up because I know it keeps me balanced. And in 5 years, the other piece is around my physical health and well-being, and that I will continue to be strong and train and being able to. There's something here in BC, and if you can put the link to it one day, it's called the Grouse Grind, and
Okay.
the Grouse Grind. And for many people who've come to Vancouver, they try and they do this. And so I used to do the Grouse Grind years ago, and I used to do it with my dad, and he did it right up until the year before he passed away. And so it is this climb straight up this mountain, and here in Vancouver. And my goal is to be able to get back up the mountain and be healthy enough to be able to do that. So
Oh, wow.
I think I may try it before 5 years, but by then I'll be like trying to get a better time because everyone
Oh,
time.
well, that sounds like you're going to have an epic 5 years. And with you time management skills,
Yeah.
I think you're going to kill it. You're going to surpass it.
Thank you. That's the
Sure.
goal.
I think for sure. So, what are you promoting right now and how can people reach you about it?
Sure. Well, right now, the most important thing for me is to be able to create connections and for people to be able to contact me through the 42-minute club. Time with Intention is the Facebook group that I have. And that's really one of my first steps is around creating relationship and creating a community. So that's one of the steps. And in there, I do videos about some of my experiences and the places where I am and how I'm using the time tools and introducing different time tools. And I invite people to share their experiences, where their barriers are, where their challenges are. And then once they're there, if somebody wants to DM me and wants to book in a private coaching session, which I do, that's great. I have coaching sessions where I sell one, or I actually also sell sets of 5 or 6 sessions where people then can have an opportunity to have a whole series of work that they can do with me. So there are many different ways that we can do that. Yeah, so that would be great. And then if anybody is curious about my fiction books, they can get them on Amazon. And so the series is Wine, Love, and Friendship, and the first book is The Girl in the Peach Tree. So if anybody just wants to check out one of my fun fiction books, they're women's fiction, struggle, challenge, finding their way, determination.
Yes.
Like this. Much like me, people say, "Are you Maya?" She's the main character of my book. "Are you Maya?" And I'm like, "Well, pieces of me maybe, but not all." And so, yes, but would really love if people are really interested in being able to see what's happening in the growth and development of van art expression and the time side of what I'm doing and that new side. So yeah, just check it out and we welcome you to the community.
Wonderful. So we'll make sure that we get all of those links below and then people can check all of that out.
Awesome.
You have anything else to add? Any questions?
The only thing I would say is I want to thank you, Diane. I know that you are taking your own steps in this new piece of your business and your development. I just want to say how much courage it takes to be able to create a podcast and then invite people on and be talking. And I just really feel very honored to be able to be here at this beginning stage of this part of your career. And that I'm just here with you today. We're talking all things business and fun and life and art.
Well, it's been a pleasure to have you on, Michelle. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your insights.
Thank you. I thank you. I look forward to talking with you again soon and just
Yeah.
enjoy the rest of the day.
Yes, you too.
All right.
So, this has been Business Breakthroughs with Diane Fulmer and guest Michelle Oucharek-Deo. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like, comment, save, share, and subscribe. See you next time.